here then to talk about assessment for learning, which is the focus of the month, and there's a course running on it. There have been a series of webinars. We had a bit of a discussion on it last week, and then we've got this session, and then we've got another session next Saturday. So with a bit of luck, you will be very, very familiar with the topic by the time we finish. So I'm going to pass over to Massamba. The general format of the webinar is as usual. We will work through various tasks. Massamba will ask you various questions, which he'll ask you to put into the chat. He'll talk about various topics, and then if we have time at the end, we'll do any questions you have, and I'll monitor the chat for any sort of specific questions. And then in 2 weeks' time, not next week this time, but in 2 weeks' time, Massamba and one of the other colleagues who's going to do another session next week on the topic will come back into the discussion group, the Telegram discussion group, and we'll talk about the issue. We'll try and relate it directly to your particular context. So without further ado, let me pass over to Massamba, and thank you very much for agreeing to do this talk and going through the process of getting it ready. So I'll pass over and I'll disappear from the screen for the time being, but I will be around if you need me.
Gary, for giving me the floor. Special thanks to Steve and Gary for your support all along the process, for making sure everything is well vetted before I start this presentation. Okay, so today I'm going to present on assessment. A lot has been said about assessment this week. So as the saying goes, we cannot reinvent the wheel. So I'm just going to share with you a few insights related to assessment. So the presentation, the topic of the presentation is assessment for learning, how to make learning effective. So first of all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Massamba Seck. I am a qualified high school teacher of English from Senegal. I've been teaching for over 20 years now. I earned an MA in English grammar and a master's degree in linguistics from Cheikh Anta Diop University, Dakar. Thanks to the English Connects program, I attended a special language and international house from the UK, pilot classroom resources in Senegal, and the Ministry of National Education. And I strongly believe in the benefits of continuing professional development, because I think that I'm someone who will be learning for lifetime. Okay, that was a brief introduction, okay, about myself. So now about the learning outcomes, the session outcomes today. In this session, we will give a definition of assessment, and then we'll describe 3 assessment types and the purpose of each. After that, we'll focus on assessment for learning. Then we'll explore assessment for learning strategies. And finally, we'll expand on the benefits of assessment for learning. Now, to start, I'm going to ask a question to the audience. What is assessment? So you can write your answers in the chat box. Maybe Gary, you will read the answers in the chat box for me.
Yeah, I will do. There's nothing coming up at the moment, so people should be typing what they think assessment is in the meeting chat.
Yes, you're right. Absolutely.
So please put what you think, what assessment is for you. How do you see assessment? Please type it into the chat. Is anybody typing in the Telegram group?
No, nothing yet from Telegram.
No? Okay. We've got one person, one brave person. I know it's coming through now. So collecting information about teaching and learning. It's a method to evaluate the level at which the learning has taken place. The measurement of the level of learning and teaching. So those are the three things so far. So two about measurement or evaluation. Another one more general about collecting information. It's a way of checking if the concept taught has been understood. So whether the learners have understood something. So what learners thought, finding out what learners thought, what they've learned, how far the learning outcomes have been achieved.
Yes.
Yeah. So quite a lot of things there. So getting information on what has been taught. So.
Yes, great answers, because I can see some keywords like collecting, evaluation, measurement. Okay, how much should the learners have mastered what they have learned? So that's great. Now, so we're going to look at some experts' definition of assessment. Now, according to Grabowski, assessment is a process of collecting information about a learner according to procedures that are systematic and grounded in theory for the purpose of making informed decisions. Yes. So in here, when you talk about procedure, we have to think about the strategies, the tools, and the devices we use to assess learning. And yes, and this also is in line with, what the answers that were given by the participants. Now, according to Gibbs, assessment frames learning, creates learning activity, and orients all aspects of learning behaviors. Yes, this is true, because once the teacher identified the weaknesses, the teacher can plan strategies accordingly to orient learners to the right path. Assessment refers to the variety of strategies or tools. Here comes again strategies and tools. These are very key words when it comes to talking about assessment that teachers use to gather accurate information about student performance for the sake of evaluating their learning progress. So this is very important. So the information we collect should be accurate and should be used, to make the student progress in their learning, concerning their skill acquisition or educational needs. Okay, so next question. When do you assess? You can still, write your answers in the chat box.
Dr. Mercurial says every time, so all the time is what he says.
Okay.
So next person is talking about assessing. You assess before, during, after teaching has taken place. That's Ogun Mathan. Again, excuse my pronunciations. Grace Ishaku says as often as possible, anytime during teaching and learning. That's Dr. Mercurial again. So Dorcas says after the teaching and learning experience, again, Vika says all the time. So quite a lot of people suggesting you do it on a regular basis. So
okay. Yes, amazing. Okay, great answers. Okay, so assessing all the time on a regular basis. Okay, so before learning takes place. Okay, these are great answers. Now, traditionally, teachers assess students at the end of an instructional unit or sequence. So, however, when assessment and instruction are interwoven, both the students and the teacher benefit. And I think this is very important, and this is in line with some answers in the chat box, that we should assess all the time, okay? As long as we think that it is necessary to assess, assessment should be, applied in our classrooms. Now, the next question, how do you assess? You list in the chat some assessment methods you typically apply in your classroom. Now it comes to talking about assessment methods. So how do you assess in your classrooms? Okay, try and list in the chat some methods you typically apply in your classrooms.
Socratic questioning.
Mm-hmm.
So that's Ogun Method. And then Dr. Mercurial, informally and formally.
Yeah, that's great. Questioning is a good method. Yes, informally and formally. So
They
these are great answers.
Socratic questioning, specifically Socratic questioning. So.
Specifically, okay, questioning.
That's two.
Yes, do we have any other reactions?
Not at the moment, and there's nothing in Telegram yet, although Zinni is typing at the moment, so maybe we'll get something in a minute. But no, not at the moment. Oh, wait a minute. She says in the Telegram, I feel there's a need to assess the students' understanding of what is being taught as the teaching and learning progresses. So that's not necessarily about methods, but it's saying that it needs to happen on a regular basis. So somebody else called Clara says, I assess my students through oral questions, comments from students, and written questions.
Questions.
Yeah, so class tasks, says Victoria Silas. So that's, yeah, Steve has put the same comment from Zinni in, that the need for the students to understand what is actually being said. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, so basically.
So this also mentions games as well. We've got a mention of games from Vika again, from Vika, and it just says questions and tasks. Another person called Imam talks about questions and tasks.
Wow, games sounds interesting. So I mean that we can gamify, so we can gamify assessment. Okay, that's great. Yes, I would really like to know about that methods assessing through games.
Well, as we've got quite a small group at the end, maybe we could come back to that, and you can ask the person, and they can tell you a bit more about it. So,
all right.
Somebody says pop quizzes. Somebody else says scenario cases, interviews. So we're getting an interesting range here, Massamba, now.
Yes, quizzes, interviews. Yes, that's very interesting. Right, it's great. Really insightful. Is there anybody else typing in the chat, or Gary?
I think that's about it at the moment. There's quite a few things there. So you've got tasks and games, pop quizzes, as we said, interviews, scenario cases.
Yes, really. So you see, we have a variety of assessment methods. Yes, and all these are great tools, okay, to assess our learners.
So somebody's also now put in exams, which maybe is a summative assessment rather than formative.
Yes, for sure. Exams, okay, are likely to be related to summative assessment. Right. All right. Now, assessment of or for learning. What is the difference? Now, this question is, what is the difference between assessment of learning and assessment for learning? You can write your answers in the chat box.
Marcel says of learning happens at the end of the lesson.
Okay, all right, that's great. So of learning
happens at the end of the lesson, and
at the end of the lesson.
And for learning happens during the process of teaching. That's both of those are from Marcel.
Yeah, for learning during the lesson.
So Ogunmefan talks about assessment of learning is to check if learning has taken place. Sorry, that's disappeared. Has taken place. Assessment for learning is to check how else to help the learner.
Yes.
So Ala Gamal Mohammed says assessment for learning happens during the process, while assessment of learning happens at the end.
Yes, that's great. Amazing answers. Really, definitely. So assessment learning happened at the end of the lesson. Assessment for learning happened during the lesson. Okay, and these are applied to help the learners. So great reactions, great answers. Okay, really clear. Okay, make the difference between assessment of learning and assessment for learning. Assessment of learning. What is the difference? Now, assessment of learning all occurs at the end of a chapter or unit. Yes, as was stated, okay, in the chat box, okay, by some participants. Great. Evaluates what students learn. It covers complete content areas. Assigns a grade to students' understanding. Okay, this is another typical characteristic of assessment of learning. That is, students are assigned grades, okay, for their performance. Emphasizes the product of student learning. So assessment of learning focuses on the end product. Now, unlike assessment of learning, assessment for learning occurs throughout the chapter or unit. So like some participant stated, okay, during the lesson, it improves how students learn. Yes, as somebody said, it is designed to help the learners, cover small content areas, monitors how students are learning, and focuses on the process of student learning. So assessment for learning focuses on the process and not on the project as assessment of learning. Right, so here we have the main characteristics, okay, that differentiate assessment of learning, okay, with assessment for learning. Okay, now we're going to have a look at the assessment process. So as I said in my introduction, we are going to talk about 3 types of assessment. So these are the 3 types. You have pre-assessment, formative assessment, and summative assessment. Okay, and this order has not been, put at random. So pre-assessment first, formative, and then finally summative assessment. So we're going to have some insights in each of these type of assessment. First question, we're going to talk about summative assessment. What is summative assessment? What is its purpose? Now, this is a question, so participants can write the answers in the chat box. What is summative assessment and what is its purpose?
So nobody's typed anything yet. So waiting for people to react. It takes a little time, particularly if people are on a phone. So.
For sure, yes. Okay. Let's give him some time.
So Weebat Imam says an assessment of learning and it's used to assign grades. Hold on, that's just disappearing up the screen too quickly for me now. Happens at the end of a unit or year. The purpose is to find out the student's mastery of the unit. Summative assessment occurs at the end of a learning process, and it checks how well the learners did during the period under consideration. Summative assessment comes at the end, so it's basically saying the same things, that it's at the end, and it's associated with grades usually.
Yes, these are great answers. These are great answers. Okay, so the word grades comes again, and this occur at the end of the year or at the end of a unit, just to judge how well learners, okay, did. Okay, is there anybody else typing? Gary?
Let me just check one new message there. Yeah, Grace has said very similar things. Summative assessment comes at the end of the process, determines understanding what has been taught or learned, and then to test students' overall grasp in a course. That's Dr. Mercurial.
Yes, that's great. That's great. Okay, so thank you for your great answers to that question. What is summative assessment, and what is its purpose? So yes, summative assessment is assessment of learning. Okay, as somebody said, a summative assessment evaluation is designed to provide information, make judgments about student achievement at the end of a sequence of instruction, and be final drafts at times, test, exam assignments, project performances. Okay, an example maybe will be with our national exams that take place at the end of the year. So these are, yes, these fall in the category of assessment of learning. It is usually grade-based, yes. So grades are assigned to students and focuses on measuring learning achievement at the end of unit or study period of a particular of a particular course. Yes, so definitely this is what assessment of learning is and its purpose. Now we're gonna move on. We're gonna move on to another type of assessment. What is pre-assessment and what is its purpose? So after summative assessment, now we're going to talk about pre-assessment. So what is pre-assessment and what is its purpose? You can type your answers in the chat box, please.
Waiting for people to type, I think so.
What is pre-assessment? What is its purpose?
We've got one contribution so far. So pre-assessment is an assessment carried out before the teaching process to ascertain how much the learners already know or what level they are. So that's a good method. And then Diouf says for neat analysis. Grace Ishaku says this is to assess a full knowledge of the learners concerning the subject. So prior knowledge, I guess that means. Assessing prior knowledge. Pre-assessment is asking, this is from Chris Adallo, pre-assessment is asking questions to know the level of knowledge the students have. So it's needs analysis, testing learners before the main assessment, it says Vika. So needs analysis, what students know in advance.
Yeah.
Maybe testing them before the main assessment. So that's sort of the summative assessment, a bit different from some of the others. Yeah. How much a student knows about learners, about how a new subject that's going to be taught. So that's the kind of stuff we're getting. So.
Yes, that's great. So these are great answers. So main ideas, the bottom line is, okay, as pre-assessment happens before learning takes place, okay, as said by one participant. This is to gauge the learner's knowledge about a topic before it is taught, and testing learners before the main test. Needs analysis. Yes, this is very important. This, I mean, can allow the teacher to be aware of the learner's strengths and weaknesses, and accordingly plan teaching strategies. How much learners know about a topic before it is taught. Yes, so these are great answers, really. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, okay, for these insightful answers concerning pre-assessment. So pre-assessment is definitely an assessment of learning. Pre-assessment, okay, some people call it diagnostic assessment. And the purpose of pre-assessment is to determine learners' current knowledge and skills before teaching takes place. Okay, so we have a similar answer in the chat box. It is used to identify students' strengths and weaknesses and thereby plan future lessons. So therefore, it is an assessment for learning. Okay, we use it to help learners make progress and reach their learning goals. Definitely. Now, the next question. Now we're going to talk about formative assessment. What is formative assessment and what is its purpose? So you can type your answers in the chat box, please.
Coming through just yet, so
No reaction.
not yet. Not yet.
Not yet. Okay,
I'm
so
just checking on the Telegram group as well, so see if there's anything there. So again, Dr. Mercurial, Asmare, sure what around the name is. So it says an assessment that we do during the teaching and learning process. So progressive, he uses the term progressive assessment. Chris Adallo says this could be the assessment that is carried out while the lesson is ongoing. It's also got or completed, so maybe he means is a he assessment carried on while the lesson is ongoing. So Dr. Asmare talks about the student's process in order to be, to have a diagnostic effect. so to try and diagnose students' issues.
Mhm.
Again, it's, yeah, Clara Agbara talks about it being ongoing and mentions that it isn't graded. She says it may not be graded. So that, I guess, means it could be graded, but it isn't usually graded formative
Yeah,
assessment.
yeah.
Maybe you give a, I don't know, you give an indicative grade. You say maybe, well, this is a good piece of work, but if you did this, this, and this, I guess that's what you mean. So.
All right. Yes, yes, definitely. These are great answers. Okay, so really insightful answers about formative assessment. Happens during the teaching and learning process. Okay, definitely, that's right. And it is an ongoing process for sure. And then, yes, it isn't usually graded. So assessment for learning uh, does not put the emphasis on the grades, because what matters is to make sure that learning is effectively taking place. Okay, so grades do not matter as far as assessment for learning is concerned, really. Okay, thank you. Thank you for your great answers to that question related to formative assessment and its purpose. So formative assessment is a learner-oriented teaching approach. Okay, so here the learner is at the center of the process. And it focuses on continuous effective feedback to allow students to improve their performance. Because the main goal is just to help students improve their performance. It happens while learning is still underway. So formative assessment occurs while learning is taking place. And this is the bottom line. This is very important. Compared to assessment of learning or summative, so assessment for learning, beyond the purpose of scoring and grading, aims to gather insights about the learner's progress. So here, the teacher wants to make sure the learners are making progress and are trying to reach their learning goals. And scores or grades, okay, are not important at all. So here, we gather insight about the learner's progress and identify what their strengths and weaknesses are. And this information is in turn used through constructive feedback to improve the overall teaching and learning process. So the main goal of formative assessment is to improve the teaching and learning process, to make sure students are learning and are aware that they are making progress. And grade and score, okay, do not matter as far as formative assessment is concerned. Yes, so as you can see here in the picture, so this is about learning, it's about getting better. So this type of assessment, formative assessment is not about accountability. That is, marks, grades, okay, do not matter. So, and not just taking a measurement of where a student is, but making changes depending on where they need to be. That's it. So here you have to make sure, to try to spot the students' weaknesses and try to find strategies as to make them improve in their learning and reach the learning goals. So it is really about getting better. So the focus is on learning and not on grades. Okay, that's crystal clear. Yes, learning versus grades. Yeah, some teachers talk about learning, some teachers talk about grades. Now, the question is, can these coexist peacefully? Should one take precedence over the other? Yes, please give your impression, give your reactions in the chat box, please, to this question. Can these coexist peacefully, or should one take precedence over the other? Yes, you can write your reactions in the chat box. Okay, you can take some notes.
So Diouf says that they have to coexist. He says they have to coexist.
Yes, they have to, meaning it's a necessity.
Yeah.
All right.
To use both. So Chris Hidalgo says, yes, they can coexist, but learning should be talked about more than grades.
All right, good. Great, that's great. Yes, that's great. So they can coexist,
Okay.
but learning.
A couple of other comments. So Vika says grades are good, but I think learning should take precedence. Grace Ishaku says, I'm of the opinion that they have to coexist. So the same point that's made earlier. Yeah, so I think they can coexist because they happen at different times, says Azine Jima. And then Ogun Mefun says, I think they can coexist peacefully, but learning should be given more importance than grades. So most people are saying that, yeah, they can coexist, but that learning is more important than the grade. So what students are learning is more important than the grade they get.
Yes, so for sure. Okay, so the answer that stands out is that they can coexist, definitely. But learning, okay, should take precedence over grades. Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
That's the point.
Yes, and both are used in our educational systems. Okay, but I think okay, like most people stated, we must focus on learning, and learning also can help boost motivation and ultimately improve the exam performance. Right. So they can coexist, but the emphasis should be put on learning, really. Thank you very much for your reactions. That are really great. Now we're going to talk about the main characteristics of assessment for learning. Now these assessments are assessments that are conducted throughout teaching and learning to diagnose students' needs. So it's important. So if you want to know about students' strengths and weaknesses, you have to conduct AFL assessment for learning. Plan the next steps in instruction based on specific information. And now this is related to the previous point. Once, okay, you gather or you collect the information, this information help you to make plans, okay, concerning the future instruction. Refer to what happens on a daily basis in the classroom. So assessment for learning refer to what happens on a daily basis in the classroom. So that is, it's something that is very, very dynamic. Help students know where they are at instructionally and where they need to go. So this is very important. So students should know where they are and be aware of their difficulties and try to set goals in order to achieve their learning goals. Provide continual feedback that helps student progress over time. Now, very important because I mean, student feedback story should be something that is continual. So ongoing feedback, as somebody said at the beginning of the presentation. And this will help student progress over time. And these assessments are non-graded. Okay, so here grades are not assigned, okay, when it comes to assessment for learning, right? Because the focus is on learning. So we want to make sure that learning is effective. Right, so now we're going to talk about assessment for learning strategies. And here we're going to focus on 7 key steps. Now, there are some questions, okay, we have to ask. The first one is, where am I going? Yes, because it's like a journey, right? So here students are in front of they are about to start a learning journey. And the first question is, where am I going? So one step, number one, provide a clear and understandable vision of the learning target. So intentions clearly define learning objectives and outcomes. So this is the role of the teacher, of course. The learning intention helps students stay focused and involved. Now, so at the beginning, you should clearly state the objectives and the intentions. So these are the learning goals. Step 2, use examples and models of good performance. Success criteria. So success criteria describe what the student need to focus on, how they will know they have been successful in achieving the learning goals. So this is very important. So success criteria are specific goals. And here they can be given in the form of rubrics or checklists. So in some, students are guided on what they are expected to learn and what quality work looks like. This is the step 2. Okay, so first question, where am I going now? Next question, where am I now? Now, teachers should offer regular descriptive feedback. So it's important to offer descriptive feedback. That is, you offer the feedback in details, okay? And it shouldn't be some general statement like, okay, good job, or you could do better. So you have to go in the details for students to benefit from the feedback. You teach students to self-assess and set goals. Okay, so self-assessment is also something people can use in assessment for learning and guide students to set goals, to set learning goals, and also make efforts to reach these goals. So after where am I? Next question. Now, how can I close the gap? Okay, so design lessons to focus on one aspect of quality at a time. Yes, and this is important. So here we should focus on particular areas of learning. So we have to be, yes, specific in designing lessons and focus on one aspect of quality at a time. Teach students focus revisions. So it's very important. The students should be able to know what they have learned, okay, how they have learned it, and what they need to learn. It's important, and this helps them stay focused. So they will be motivated and determined to achieve their learning goals. And step 7, engage students in self-reflection and let them keep track of and share their learning. This is important. Okay, students should reflect on their learning and keep track of what they learn and share their learning, because by sharing their learning, they can benefit from feedback. This feedback can come from the peers or from the teachers, and this is much to their benefit. Now, questions to the participants. What assessment for learning strategies do you apply in your classrooms? You can write your answers in the chat box. What AFL strategies do you apply in your classrooms?
So somebody's just written all, so gift has said all, which maybe needs a bit more detail really.
Paul?
Just all, you know, so all different kinds of strategies, I suppose, is what they mean. So Imam talks about questions and answers.
Questions, yes.
Grace Shaku says almost all the steps listed because of the differences in the learners.
Listing, so I can hear you very well, Gary.
So almost all of the steps listed. So all of the different steps, all of the different things we talked about, I guess is what she's saying, because of
yes.
the differences in the learners. So we need to do a variety of different things because of the range of learners we have. Methven also says, I use practically all. So they say that they use all of the different techniques that have been suggested during the session.
Yes, that's definitely. Okay. All right.
So somebody else, Clara Agbara, talks about summarizing what was taught, allowing oral questions and answers and comments from students.
Yes. Okay, so these are great answers, okay? Questioning. So we can use a variety of strategies, okay? That's true, summarizing what was taught. Yes, this is another strategy we can use, okay, in AFL. Okay, thank you very much for your great answers. Now, so I'm going to share with you a few strategies. Cooperative learning activities, right? So this involves students working together to achieve a common goal or to complete a task. Yes, example, okay, TPA, Think, Pay, Share is an example of cooperative learning activity. So in Think, Pay, Share, for instance, students, work individually first and then they pair up to discuss their thoughts and findings. And finally, pays, share with the whole class. You have demonstrations, okay, and these allow students to showcase the language skills. You have exit and admit tickets, okay, or exit and admit slips, depends. So these are brief assessment tools to gauge students' understanding of a lesson, and this happens generally at the end of a lesson. You also have graphic organizers, which are visual tools, okay, that allow learners to organize information or ideas, okay, in graphs and try and make connections. Yes, because we have to bear in mind that we have different learning styles. Okay, some students are more comfortable when it comes to graphs, right? When it comes to working with graphics. Example here of graphic organizers, okay, we have mind map, for instance, the mind map, okay, so we have a topic and we ask students to generate ideas that are related to that topic, or a flow chart, okay, which is mainly about the process. I learned statements, right? So here, this is in line with the one answer, summarizing what was taught. I learned, so we ask students to make sentences related to what they learned. Interviews, okay, so you can organize interviews, okay, just asking questions in a conversational way, informal, okay, just to make sure students have mastered the item that have been taught. And you have KWL. KWL, which stands for what I know, what I want to know, and what I learn. So here, this is used, the K. Okay, so what I know, this is just to activate learners' prior knowledge about a topic. What I want to know, so here learners are going to ask questions, and what I learned, this occurs after students have gone through a set of activities related to the topic. Informal questioning, yes, you can just ask question in an informal way, just to make sure, okay, everything is understood. You have learning logs. So learning logs, this allows students to note down and keep track of what they have learned, how they have learned it, and to write about the challenges also. Okay, so these are generally written documents in the form of journals or portfolios. Oral presentations, So our presentation allows students to showcase their communication skills. Peer assessment. So students can benefit from feedback coming from their peers. It's important. Now, of course, this is going to be under the guidance of the teacher, of course. So in this kind of activity, the teacher, for example, can give some criteria in the form of a checklist or rubric and ask students to assess their peers' performance or work. Questioning, just asking questions, okay, just to check understanding, or use quiz, and then, okay, quizzes are very important and they allow to the teachers to give timely feedback. Self-assessment, okay, so students can assess themselves and take ownership of their learning. So this is important, and this fosters learner autonomy. Okay, they are aware of where they are, the progress they have to make in order to reach their learning goals. And I think that we have to insist on that to foster learning autonomy among our students and make them active learners. Okay, now next question. What are the benefits of assessment for learning? What are the benefits of AFL? You can write your reactions in the chat box for that question. Any reaction, Gary?
Not yet. Somebody, Azine Chima, has said that she throws a question to the learners. This was, I think, related to your use of ideas, and they respond either orally or in writing. And so she, I'm saying a she, but I don't know, maybe it's a he. It's basically they're saying that they allow students either to respond orally or in writing, which is a nice idea. I think we're getting benefits coming through now. So Vika says it helps learners to improve their learning. And Dr. Asmare says promotes students' autonomy in learning in general. And Chris Adallo says makes the teacher understand the level the learners are already operating at. This further helps him or her to handle the subject matter better. And then Gift says it helps the teacher to know the weaknesses and strengths of learners.
Yes.
And Ogumafen says it helps to expose misconceptions in the learners and helps the teacher improve the learning process.
Yes, really great ideas, okay? Improving students' learning, fostering autonomy. Okay, helps learners handle the subject matter, sorry, that's great. And helps the teacher know the learner's weaknesses. Yes, and I like the one that is clarify misconceptions. So this is very important, especially when you're about to start a new lesson. It's important sometimes to clarify misconceptions. Okay, thank you very much for those great ideas. Now, benefits of AFL. AFL provide teachers with information about specific next instructional steps for students. Yes, this is very important because the instructional steps are determined by the information we collect from the students through assessment. That's very important. AFL provides timely and constructive feedback that will help pupils identify improvement. Yes, and this is important because feedback is given on the spot and is constructive. Yes, that is the teacher goes into details. Okay, try really find out, okay, what doesn't really work, and then try to find ideas and strategies, okay, to close the gap. Guide learners to reflect on their learning. Yes, somebody has talked about autonomy. Take action and move forward on their learning journey. This is important. So students are more autonomous with assessment for learning. Okay, they take more responsibility, okay, as concerning, they say, their learning. And this is very important. It fosters learner autonomy and makes students very active learners indeed. Students are motivated and become more independent learners. Okay, so in this case, okay, when you help them set goals, this motivates them and they become independent learners. Right, so teacher is just a guide and a facilitator, okay, and students are very active in the learning process. Assessment for learning can build learners' confidence in their ability to reach targets through hard work and determination, of course, and this can build confidence, okay, among the learners and help them, okay, make the right or the necessary efforts in order to reach the learning goals. Assessment for learning helps to create a supportive and cooperative classroom. That's very important. So students feel very comfortable in the classroom, and the classroom becomes a safe place where they can learn, and they know that they will get support from the peers and from the teacher. And I think this is very, very important. Assessment for learning supports differentiated instruction. Now, this is very important. So assessment for learning should be inclusive. So no student should be left aside. So as you can see in the quotation below, it contributes to promoting more equitable outcomes for low achieving students. So here, low achieving students are taken into account, and the teacher makes the necessary efforts, right, to do the best in order to take into account, okay, low achieving students who may have more problems, and then give them the necessary support. Assessment for learning helps improve teaching practices. Yes, this is important because once the teacher gather the information, so based on the information, he can decide to reteach, move on, or change the teaching strategies. So this is a way of improving teaching practices. Okay, now we're coming toward the end of this presentation. Now I want all participants to write 3 things in the chat box, 3 things you have learned from this presentation.
Yeah, a couple of people are having a bit of a struggle getting in and out, so Dr. Hasmari's been come back in again. If you want to repeat your question, so Massamba?
Yes?
So a couple of people I think have struggled with internet connectivity. So what we're asking, what Massamba is asking you to do is write 3 things that you've learned from this presentation or from the chat. And so we're beginning to get some answers now, Massamba. So Vika says form assessment is learner oriented. Ala Jamal talks about the benefits, the strategies, and also about pre-assessment. Differences between, so Weavat Imam talks about the differences between AOL and AFL assessment. So lots of things coming up. AFL is beneficial.
All right. So that's great. That's great. Okay. So it means that this presentation has been useful. Okay.
Okay. Well, Thank you very much, Massamba. I think
Okay, thank you, Gary. Thank you once again for your support. Thank you, Steve. Okay, thank you all participants. Thank you, the British Council, for supporting, okay, continuing professional development, okay, much to the benefit of teachers of English in Sub-Saharan area. Okay, thank you. Great thanks really to everybody.
Okay, so yeah, so as I said at the end, thank you, Massamba, for that. Very informative. So in 2 weeks' time, well, in 1 week time, on the Saturday, hopefully on the Saturday, we're going to have another session which will focus more on some of the practical side of doing assessment for learning. So there'll be more announcements about that in the Telegram group. And then in 2 weeks' time, we'll ask Massamba and Autonomy, who's the other speaker, to come back and sort of summarize some of the things or discuss some of the things that we've been focusing on in the assessment for learning. So hopefully.
Okay, yes, that's perfect. That's perfect, Gary. That's perfect.
Okay, so thanks everybody. And there is in the group now, in the teachers group, in the Telegram teachers group, there's a link to the feedback form. So you're going to put that into here as well, into the chat here, Steve. Have you already done that? Sorry, I can't see that at the moment. So yes, it's there. Sorry, it came in while I was looking at other things. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks everybody for coming on a Sunday afternoon, and there will be a recording at some point in the not too distant future, and we will continue looking at assessment for learning and indeed probably assessment of learning via the course and via the next webinar and our subsequent discussion. So